bell? Oh yes, of course. It was in the last century, Grandma and Grandpa's generation. Legend has it that there were still dinosaurs hiding in caves up in the mountains. But that is something we're really not sure of at all. Back then, everyone was recovering from the Second World War and its 70 million dead, the most devastating conflict in human history. So in 1948, to make sure such atrocities would not happen again, the search for shared values began. Why? Have people unite around a strong symbol, the Universal Declaration of Human Rights. What is less known is that it was adopted by the UN General Assembly and has become the most translated text on Earth. But what are human rights? The rights you are entitled to simply because you are a human being. In other words, everyone benefits from them from birth, without exception or distinction. The idea behind it is that these rights are like needs. They are absolutely necessary to live well. Without them, it would be the law of the jungle, and you'd risk being beheaded if your government didn't like your Facebook status. In the Declaration's 30 articles, there are the civil and political liberties, such as the right to life, the right to vote, freedom of expression, or the prohibition of slavery and torture. Rights are interdependent, indivisible, and interrelated. This means that if a right is not respected, a series of other rights won't be either. If you are homeless, you live in the streets, so you can't sleep. You get sick, you don't go to school, and won't find a job. Violation of the right to adequate housing triggers the violation of the right to rest, the right to education, the right to work, etc. These are economic, social, and cultural rights. Okay, so a great text was agreed upon, but who does what? Well, on paper, the state's mission is to take the necessary measures for the Declaration to be respected. But in reality, there are some very bad students. The Declaration is not a legislative text, it's an ideal. Its name says it all. It is a declaration. Therefore, it is not valid in a court of law. But most states have integrated human rights in their constitution, and therefore, they must guarantee them. You can defend human rights only if you know them. Everybody's role is to ensure they are respected. Collective conscience means that each and every person is responsible for everybody else's well-being. Therefore, we can all get involved, protest against injustices, and make the universal rights ideal succeed.
Human rights. What are human rights? Human rights are the fundamental freedoms and protections that belong to every single one of us, regardless of race, gender, sexuality, religion, or beliefs. Rights are about being treated and treating others fairly, and ensuring everyone can make choices about their own lives. They're about justice, freedom, and equality. Here's a quick breakdown of your rights. The Universal Declaration of Human Rights states that all humans are born free and equal in dignity and in rights. They're endowed with reason and conscience and should act towards one another in a spirit of kinship, which means that no matter who you are, the very fact that you're a human being grants you these rights. Your life is your life, and it cannot be unjustly taken from you just because some people don't like you, and that is regardless of what nationality you are, cultural background, religion, or political views. You may not be forced into slavery, and you're not required to follow any social obligations, constraints, or restrictions others might feel you have due to your race, sex, gender identity, or sexual orientation. You have the right to start a family and own property, and nobody can say that you can't. If you become sick, you have the right to healthcare. You also have the right to education and any other necessary social services, such as disability care, for example. No person or entity can ever take these rights away from you. If your government infringes on any of these rights, you have the right to seek asylum and refuge in another nation. At work, you have the right to fair working conditions, fair and equal pay, and the right to join and form trade unions to protect your interests. You also have the right to rest and leisure, including holidays. If you have a run-in with the law, you may not be subjected to any cruel or unusual punishment, and you cannot be punished before first being proven guilty in a court of law. If you feel a law is unjust, you have the right to protest, making phone calls, writing to your leaders, or by peacefully taking it to the streets. These rights are there to protect you and your loved ones. They also exist to protect your neighbours, your friends, your rivals, and even people whose opinions or lifestyles you don't agree with. These are some of your human rights. Yours and everyone else's. Together, we can protect them. When we do, all our lives are better and we create a better world for everyone.
I'm sometimes asked what I mean when I refer to myself as a secularist. The term secular has different meanings, but when I describe my own position as secular, I'm referring to a view encompassing two broad principles. Firstly, the separation of religion from state leaves religious people free to practice their religion, provided they don't infringe the freedoms of others, and allows the non-religious to live without the imposition of religion through law, education, government, employment, or health. This promotes freedom of religion and from religion. Secondly, the principle of equality before the law seeks to remove all privilege or penalty for having or lacking religious faith, to ensure that no belief, religious or otherwise, receives special protection from criticism, and that inequalities which some support within their religion won't be supported outside it. Obviously, under this principle, blasphemy and apostasy are non-punishable. When properly understood, secularism creates an environment of equality that benefits us all, which is why it's supported by theists and atheists, religious and non-religious people alike. This is not a Christian nation. It's not even a religious nation. It's a nation of many faiths and none. And even within faith groups there can be fundamental differences of opinion on important issues. Establishing secular boundaries that prevent any single religion imposing its values on everyone else is as much a protection for the religious as it is for the non-religious. Boundaries naturally upset those whose nature is to impose, and people who've got used to privilege don't like it being removed. Their complaints are to be taken for granted. When Said Avasi told the Vatican that aggressive secularism is being imposed by stealth, likening it to totalitarianism and saying secularism denied people the right to religious identity, this was shameless misrepresentation. Secularism denies no one religious identity. It defends that freedom, but not the freedom to impose that identity on others. What secularism says is that having a religious identity does not justify special tax exemption, especially for the already rich, preaching religion in state schools, inserting narrow religious values into common law, having unelected religious leaders as legislators, or demanding council prayers. Redressing these unjust and inappropriate privileges is not totalitarian, nor is it an attack on faith. It's a recognition of the freedom of all people to live without divisive inequalities. Secular principles, supported by theists and atheists alike, encourage fairness and mutual consideration, and help us all within reasonable limits to live together in the way we choose.
What is humanism? Humanism is a philosophical school of thought that in its contemporary form is similar in its thinking to atheism and agnosticism, in that most contemporary humanists reject the existence of a divine being, focusing instead on the possibility and responsibilities of humans for creating their own reality. Rather than focusing on God and religion, humanists promote individual and collective well-being through exclusively natural and human means. Scientific discoveries motivate their approach to life, rather than a reliance on revealed religion. In its earliest iterations, humanism merely focused on manifesting a spirit of goodwill towards others, putting human beings above other interests. Initially, it was not opposed to Christianity, but in fact drew on Christian values as expressed in the Gospels, and in turn infused Christianity with a renewed interest in the humanity of Jesus Christ. During the Enlightenment, many humanists began to see religion, particularly Christianity, as more of a problem than an asset. Religion became associated with irrationalism, superstition, and oppression, particularly because of the authoritarian claims of the Church and its unequivocal claims about God. A divergence between reason and revelation ultimately led to the rise of secular humanism, a position much closer to atheism and agnosticism. Some humanists may embrace a religious yet non-supernatural approach to the pursuit of human well-being. They may recognize value in the ethics, rituals, and ceremonies of religion as a means of furthering the humanist goal of building on human abilities. Secular humanists, for the most part, reject this approach. They argue that individuals have the right to define meaning for themselves, rather than relying on religion or some divinely given external source.